Zola Ndlovu, fresh from orientation, felt like a ghost haunting the polished halls of St. Jude's Medical Center. In her modest scrubs, amidst the gleaming technology and starched white coats, she was just another rookie nurse, a quiet shadow. Dr. Octavius Rook, chief of surgery, strode past without a glance, his reputation a palpable hum in the air. Dr. Linnea Karlsson, sharp and precise, dismissed a junior resident with a curt word, embodying the hospital's rigid hierarchy. Zola, head down, observed more than she spoke, her unassuming demeanor a perfect camouflage. Today, her focus was Kaito Sato, a vibrant 10-year-old whose laughter usually echoed through the pediatric ward. Now, Kaito lay still, a fragile figure in his bed. The monitors hummed reassuringly, his vitals deceptively stable. But Zola, her gaze lingering on a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his hand, felt a cold knot of dread tighten in her stomach. A child's vibrant future, embodied in Kaito's small, still form, pulsed with a danger only Zola seemed to sense. Her quiet hope, a flicker against the hospital's cold efficiency, knew a truth no one else did. Kaito was a ticking time bomb, and Zola, the invisible nurse, carried a secret that would soon shatter the illusion of her insignificance. The sterile hum of St. Jude's Medical Center usually masked the rapid pulse of urgency beneath its polished veneer. But today, in the hushed confines of Kaito Sato's room, an unspoken tension began to thrum. Dr. Octavius Rook, a man whose presence filled the room like an undisputed monarch, stood at Kaito's bedside, his gaze dissecting the young boy's chart. His brow, furrowed in thought, was a rare sight, hinting at a puzzle even he, the brilliant chief of surgery, found intricate. Around him, a retinue of residents and nurses buzzed, their whispers hushed, their movements precise, all orbiting the formidable surgeon. Zola Ndlovu, blending seamlessly into the background, felt the familiar prickle of invisibility. She was just another rookie nurse, a quiet shadow in a world of gleaming white and sharp intellect. Yet, as Rook dictated his preliminary findings, a gnawing unease stirred within her. He spoke of a rare congenital vascular fragility, a vessel near Kaito's young heart that had begun to leak. His plan was meticulous, a complex, high-risk surgical procedure scheduled for later that day. But Zola, her eyes scanning Kaito's pale face, observed more than just the numbers on the monitor. She saw a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his left hand, a minute change in his breathing pattern that seemed to whisper of deeper, more immediate distress. The boy's vitals are holding stable for now, despite the severity, Rook declared, his voice cutting through the quiet. We prepare for the cardiac bypass. Dr. Karlsson, I trust your team is ready for immediate mobilization. Dr. Linnea Karlsson, the attending cardiothoracic surgeon, a woman as sharp and unyielding as a freshly honed scalpel, nodded. Every protocol is in place, Dr. Rook. Our pre-op assessment will be thorough. Her gaze, cool and appraising, swept over the room, pausing briefly, almost dismissively, on Zola. Zola shifted, a small coil of anxiety tightening in her chest. She knew these shifts. She'd seen them in the makeshift tents of field hospitals, under conditions where every second counted and every subtle cue was a matter of life and death. This wasn't just a fragile vessel, it was a crisis escalating, quietly, insidiously. Dr. Rook, she began, her voice a little too soft, a little too tentative in the grand theater of his presence. Kaito's lactate levels are slightly elevated, and his peripheral perfusion seems a little off. Rook barely turned, his attention still fixed on the charts. Nurse Ndlovu, we are well aware of the metabolic markers associated with internal bleeding. Your observations are noted, but hardly groundbreaking. This is a complex cardiac case, not a simple trauma. His tone, though not overtly harsh, was dripping with condescension, a dismissive wave of his hand. Beside Zola, Nurse Manager Riya Singh, a woman who upheld St. Jude's stringent protocols with almost religious fervor, gave Zola a sharp, disapproving glance. Nurse Ndlovu, please focus on the post-op preparations. Dr. Rook and Dr. Karlsson are managing the diagnostic phase. The message was clear, stay in your lane. A flush crept up Zola's neck. Humiliation stung, but it was quickly overshadowed by a growing dread. She felt the weight of Kaito's small life, a silent plea only she seemed to hear. The faint tremor in his hand seemed to intensify, his pallor deepening ever so slightly. The doctors, engrossed in their complex surgical plans, their eyes fixed on the impressive scale of the impending operation, were missing the immediate, silent battle raging within Kaito's small body. As the morning wore on, a subtle tension began to seep into the room. Kaito's stable vitals, while not overtly alarming, refused to improve. The lactate levels Zola had mentioned, dismissed earlier, began to creep upwards, albeit slowly. Rook and Karlsson, their initial confidence wavering, exchanged worried glances. Their meticulous plan for a scheduled surgery now felt increasingly vulnerable, hanging precariously in the balance. "We're losing time," Karlsson murmured, a rare crack in her composed facade. "The bleed is accelerating, faster than anticipated." Rook clenched his jaw. "We push for surgery. Immediately. Prep the OR, stat." Just as Rook's command echoed through the room, a sharp, piercing alarm shrieked from Kaito's cardiac monitor. The gentle rhythmic beeps gave way to an erratic, frantic pulse. Kaito's eyes fluttered open, wide with fear, then rolled back, his tiny body seizing. The sudden, violent deterioration was a punch to the gut for everyone present. The room, moments ago filled with controlled tension, erupted into a sudden, terrifying chaos. The sudden, violent deterioration was a punch to the gut for everyone present. The room, moments ago filled with controlled tension, erupted into a sudden, terrifying chaos. The cardiac monitor shrieked, its jagged lines mirroring the terror clawing at everyone's throats. Kaito's small body convulsed, a heartbreaking, helpless dance against an unseen enemy, before falling limp. "He's seizing," someone yelled, the voice sharp with panic. Dr. Rook barked orders, his face a mask of furious desperation. "Crash cart. AP. Get him stabilized. Stat. Where's the surgical team? We need to get him into the OR now." His voice, usually so composed, cracked at the edges. Dr. Karlsson, her hands already flying to intubate Kaito, her brow furrowed in concentration, nodded grimly. "He's in full respiratory arrest. His heart rate is plummeting. We're losing him, Octavius." Her practiced movements were quick, but a tremor of fear was visible in her usually steady hands. Zola, her heart hammering against her ribs, watched Kaito's chest. The monitors screamed a cacophony of failing systems. The internal hemorrhage wasn't just progressing, it was exploding. But it wasn't just the speed, it was the type of bleed, and the way Kaito's tiny body was compensating, or rather, failing to. She saw the subtle, specific distension in his jugular, the unusual pattern of his skin modeling, signs that screamed of a distinct type of rapid circulatory collapse that defied the standard responses. This wasn't just a simple bleed near the heart anymore, it was rapidly becoming a tension hemothorax, compressing his heart, suffocating it from the outside. A full surgical intervention, while necessary eventually, was too slow. They needed to decompress now. "Dr. Rook." Zola's voice, though quiet, cut through the frantic energy, a sharp pebble against a roaring current. "His jugular. And the modeling. It's consistent with the tension." Rook, his back to her as he frantically reviewed scans on a nearby screen, didn't even turn. "Not now, Nurse Ndlovu. We're past observations. We need action. Is the OR prepped or not?" "But sir, a full thoracotomy will take too long. We need to relieve the pressure immediately, or his heart will cease entirely," Zola pressed, her voice gaining a desperate edge. She felt the urgency in her gut, a cold, hard certainty born of countless times facing life or death in the harshest environments. Dr. Karlsson, securing the breathing tube, glanced at Zola, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. "Nurse, we are aware of the risks. Dr. Rook is moving as fast as humanly possible. This isn't a field hospital. We have protocols." Her tone was clipped, dismissive, yet beneath it, Zola sensed a deep well of frustration. Karlsson was a brilliant surgeon, but she was trapped by the very protocols and training that made her elite. Nurse Manager Singh, pale with stress, stepped between Zola and the doctors, her voice a hushed but firm command. "Zola, stand back. The doctors are handling this." follow procedure. The dismissal stung, but Zola couldn't dwell on it. Kaito's monitor shrieked again, more ominously this time. The rhythmic beeping of his heart gave a final, desperate stutter, then dissolved into a terrifying, flat, unbroken line. A chilling silence fell, broken only by the steady, unyielding of the cardiac arrest alarm. He's flatlining. Karlsson's voice was a whisper of raw horror. Rook spun around, his face ashen, seeing the grim truth on the monitor. His brilliant mind, so accustomed to control, now wrestled with utter powerlessness. His jaw clenched, a muscle jumping furiously. He knew the odds. 10-year-old Kaito Sato, vibrant and full of life just hours ago, was slipping away. The boy who had charmed the nurses with his jokes, who dreamed of becoming an astronaut, was dying right before their eyes. Desperation became a suffocating blanket in the room. The air grew thick with unspoken prayers, with the bitter taste of defeat. The frantic energy of the last few minutes gave way to a chilling stillness, as if the entire team had frozen, caught in the headlights of impending tragedy. Rook stared at the monitor, his gaze a mix of shock and utter defeat. Karlsson's shoulders slumped, her earlier focus replaced by a grim resignation. They were out of time. They were out of options. Kaito's small, fragile life was extinguished. But Zola, amidst the despair, saw something else. She saw a flicker, a ghost of a possibility. The unique, subtle signs she'd noted, dismissed by the elite, protocol-bound minds, spoke to her with an undeniable clarity. This was exactly the kind of impossible scenario she'd faced 100 times, with nothing but grit and ingenuity. As Kaito's heart gave its last, feeble protest, Zola knew. She couldn't stand by. She wouldn't. The boy's life hung by a thread, and protocol, titles, and fear of consequences meant nothing compared to the fierce, unyielding need to save him. Doesn't Zola's struggle resonate with you? We've all felt overlooked, underestimated, or had our voices ignored, despite knowing our true capabilities. But just like Zola, we all have hidden strengths waiting to shine. If you're inspired by stories of quiet heroes defying the odds and finding their true place, then you belong here. Please, hit that subscribe button and become a cherished member of our growing global community. Your support isn't just a click, it's what allows us to keep bringing you more captivating narratives and incredible journeys. Join us as we celebrate these untold tales. The air in the ER, once thick with the frantic whispers of failing medical options, now hung heavy and still, a silence colder than any death knell. The relentless, high-pitched shriek of Kaito's flatline sliced through the quiet, a brutal, unyielding testament to the life that had just flickered out. Dr. Rook's face was a mask of utter defeat, Dr. Karlsson's shoulders slumped, her professional composure finally shattering under the weight of an impossible loss. Nurse Manager Singh's hand flew to her mouth, a silent gasp of horror. The team, for all their brilliance and resources, had failed. Kaito Sato was gone. But in that desolate void, a different sound began to register for Zola. Not the flatline, which was merely the symptom, but the faint, insistent echo of countless desperate nights under a hostile sky. She saw not defeat, but a moment she'd lived 1,000 times, the last gasp before intervention, the narrowest window of opportunity. The unique, subtle physiological anomalies she'd noted, dismissed as irrelevant by the elite, protocol-bound minds, now screamed at her with undeniable clarity. This wasn't a textbook case for an open-heart surgeon, it was a field emergency, demanding a field solution. A fierce, protective current surged through Zola, overriding every instinct for self-preservation, every ingrained fear of authority. Her humble demeanor vanished, replaced by a gaze that held the unwavering resolve of a soldier. "This is it, Zola," a voice from her past whispered, sharp and clear. "No one else can do it. Not this way." She had seen too many children die when help was too slow, too conventional, too late. Kaito would not be another. With a deep, steadying breath that seemed to pull all the scattered courage in the room into her own lungs, Zola moved. Her movement was not a timid step, but a decisive, controlled surge. She pushed past a stunned intern, her small frame radiating an unexpected force, and positioned herself directly over Kaito's prone form. Her hands, usually deft with IVs and dressings, now moved with an almost primal precision, a blur of practiced intent. Without a word, she began the unconventional, precise external manipulation she knew. It wasn't resuscitation, not CPR as they knew it, but something else entirely, a rhythmic, targeted pressure, a desperate dance with the very edge of life. The flatline continued its piercing lament. "Nurse Ndlovu, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" Dr. Rook's voice, usually an imperious command, was now a guttural roar of disbelief and fury. His face, already pale with defeat, mottled with rage. He lunged forward, intent on pulling her away from the patient, as if she were a madwoman desecrating a corpse. Dr. Karlsson, her shock quickly morphing into professional indignation, snapped, "Stand down immediately. You're violating every protocol, every ethical guideline. You're risking a disciplinary hearing, nurse." Her words were sharp, cutting, designed to freeze Zola in her tracks. Nurse Manager Singh, her eyes wide with alarm, started towards Zola, a plea forming on her lips. "Zola, stop. You can't." But Zola didn't flinch. Her hands, strong and sure, continued their rhythmic work, her focus absolute. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge the shouts, the threats, the chaos erupting around her. Her ears were deaf to everything but the faint internal rhythm she was trying to coax back into existence. Her mind saw only Kaito, tiny and fragile, a life she refused to surrender. Rook's fury escalated. "Get away from that patient. You're making things worse. You'll be fired, Ndlovu. Do you hear me? Fired." He was beside her now, his hand reaching for her shoulder. Zola sidestepped him with a fluid grace born of dodging shrapnel, never breaking rhythm. She was a silent, unyielding force, the humble rookie utterly obliterated, replaced by the ghost of a frontline medic. The shouts, the threats, the incredulous stares of the other staff bounced off her like harmless pebbles. She was beyond fear for herself. Her only fear was that she wouldn't be fast enough, strong enough, precise enough to bring Kaito back from the brink. The immense pressure was a tangible weight, but she had carried heavier burdens, borne more impossible odds. She simply had to succeed. The monitor, for what felt like an eternity, remained stubbornly, terrifyingly blank, its high-pitched shriek a testament to her apparent failure. Every second of that agonizing flatline fueled the doctor's anger, solidifying their belief that she was an incompetent fool, a reckless amateur. The room was a maelstrom of professional outrage and a rookie's defiant, desperate courage. Zola, however, did not waver. The faint flicker, the ghost of a possibility she'd glimpsed, still burned in her mind, demanding her unwavering focus. She continued her methodical, unconventional work, betting her entire future, her very identity, on a faint whisper of hope, a desperate prayer that only she could hear. The room, a second ago a tempest of fury and fear, began to fall into a strange, unsettling quiet. Dr. Rook's bellows died in his throat, replaced by a ragged gasp as he stared, riveted, at Zola. Dr. Karlsson's hand, poised to grab Zola, froze in midair. Nurse Manager Singh, her face a mask of horrified disbelief, could only watch, paralyzed. The only sound now was the relentless, piercing shriek of the flatline monitor, a siren wailing over Kaito's silent heart, and the soft, rhythmic rustle of Zola's scrubs as she worked. Zola was no longer in St. Jude's. She was back in a desert tent, or a makeshift clinic carved out of a bombed-out building, the scent of dust and fear thick in the air. The sophisticated equipment and gleaming surfaces of the ER blurred into the background. Her world had shrunk to Kaito, the boy beneath her hands, and the intricate puzzle of his collapsing physiology. Her movements, devoid of the frantic energy that defined the elite team, were almost eerily calm. Her hands, usually demure and tucked away, moved with a controlled, balletic precision that captivated every stunned gaze. She wasn't applying compressions in the standard, forceful rhythm of CPR. Instead, her fingers, strong and calloused from a life far removed from sterile hospital environments, danced across Kaito's chest with a gentle yet firm pressure, finding purchase on unseen points. It was a series of subtle manipulations, small shifts and minute adjustments, a sequence that seemed to defy every medical textbook and protocol known to Dr. Rook and Dr. Karlsson. Rook's initial fury gave way to a dawning, unwelcome confusion. He'd seen every technique, every cutting-edge intervention. This was none of them. This was something else. He watched, his mind scrambling to classify, to understand, to dismiss. But the sheer, unyielding focus in Zola's eyes, the quiet authority emanating from her slight frame, held him captive. His arrogant confidence, so unwavering just moments before, began to splinter, just at the edges. Dr. Karlsson, always meticulous, always rational, found her trained eye struggling to compute what it was witnessing. Her brow was deeply furrowed, not in anger now, but in intense, analytical bewilderment. She tried to find the pattern, the known medical principle guiding Zola's odd, almost meditative rhythm. There was none. Yet, the movements weren't random, they possessed a profound, purposeful intent. It was as if Zola was speaking a language of touch that only Kaito's body understood. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The flat line continued its agonizing shriek, a constant reminder of the boy's imminent death. Yet, Zola did not falter. Her breath remained steady, her gaze locked on Kaito's pale face, as if she could will life back into him through sheer force of will and precise physical command. She was whispering now, a low murmur in a language no one recognized, a stream of encouragement and instruction, intimate and fierce. Then, a collective intake of breath swept through the room. On the monitor, the relentless, flat green line, unwavering in its pronouncement of Kaito's demise, gave a shudder. It wasn't a full beat, not a returning rhythm, but a tiny, almost imperceptible blip. A ghost of a wave. A flicker. It was so faint, so fleeting, that many almost missed it, dismissing it as a technical glitch. But Zola didn't miss it. Her grip intensified, her movements becoming even more refined, more acutely precise. Her eyes, still locked on Kaito, now held a fierce, triumphant glint. She had found it. The whisper of a pulse she'd been searching for. Rook's eyes darted from Zola's hands to the monitor, then back again. His mouth, still slightly agape, tightened. That wasn't a glitch. He knew medical equipment inside and out. That was something. Karlsson leaned forward, her scientific skepticism battling with a nascent, electrifying spark of possibility. Her mind, racing, still couldn't explain it. But her eyes, the trained eyes of a surgeon, saw the undeniable flicker. The room remained utterly silent, save for the monitor's high-pitched wail, now accompanied by a barely discernible, stuttering beat. It was irregular, weak, fighting for existence, but it was there. Zola's face, etched with fierce concentration, never broke. She continued her relentless, quiet work, a conductor coaxing an orchestra back from silence, her hands weaving a miracle no one could understand. The tension, rather than dissipating, had only intensified, transforming from panic into a fragile, terrifying hope. They watched, frozen, as the rookie nurse, dismissed and underestimated, performed an impossible dance with death. Zola's breath hitched, a silent, almost imperceptible tremor that ran through her focused frame. Her hands, still moving with a surgeon's precision and a medic's urgency, seemed to coax life back into Kaito's tiny body. Her fingers, pressing, releasing, adjusting, were a symphony of calculated touch, each movement a note in the song of survival she was conducting. The room held its breath, suspended in a moment that stretched an eternity, every eye glued to the stark tableau, the flatlining boy, the relentless nurse, the now steadier flicker on the monitor. Then, impossible though it seemed, the sporadic, desperate rhythm on the screen began to find its cadence. The high-pitched shriek of the heart monitor softened, replaced by a stuttering, then a struggling, thump-thump. A gasp, barely audible, escaped Nurse Manager Singh's lips. She clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide, glistening with an emotion she couldn't yet name. Dr. Rook, initially frozen in fury, now stood paralyzed by a different kind of shock. His jaw, which had been clamped tight in outrage, slowly, almost imperceptibly, slackened. His gaze darted from Zola's unflinching face to Kaito's chest, then back to the monitor, as if trying to reconcile the impossible reality unfolding before him with everything he knew about medicine. The vital signs, moments ago flatlining, were no longer just flickering. They were holding. Dr. Karlsson, ever the scientist, fought a losing battle against her own disbelief. Her mind screamed for an explanation, for a scientific precedent, for anything that could logically account for this reversal. But there was none. Her hands, which had been clenched into tight fists, slowly relaxed, her fingers splaying open as if to physically release the tension that had gripped her. A shiver ran down her spine, a profound mixture of awe and terror. The numbers on the screen, those irrefutable indicators of life, began to climb, slowly, tentatively, but undeniably. The rhythm solidified. The green wave on the monitor, once a flat, merciless line, now undulated with a fragile, but definite, beat. Kaito's shallow, almost imperceptible breaths deepened, becoming more regular, less desperate. The pallor that had painted his face a deathly white seemed to recede, a faint, almost imperceptible blush of life returning. Zola finally withdrew her hands, carefully, reverently. Her posture remained rigid, her eyes still scanning Kaito's face, assessing every minute change, but a profound wave of exhaustion washed over her, an invisible current that only she could feel. She had been operating on pure adrenaline, on a primal instinct honed in situations far grimmer than this pristine operating theater. Now, the battle was won, at least for this moment, and the toll was beginning to show. A collective sigh seemed to ripple through the room. It was the sound of 100 pounds of pressure releasing, of breath held for too long finally exhaled. No one spoke. The silence that followed Zola's withdrawal was heavier, more profound than the preceding chaos, filled now with bewildered wonder instead of panic. Rook moved first, his steps hesitant, as if approaching a sacred, inexplicable phenomenon. He leaned over Kaito, his eyes scanning the monitors, then the boy's chest, then back to Zola. His voice, when it came, was a raspy whisper, stripped of all its usual arrogance, raw with disbelief and a dawning, terrible respect. What did you do?" Karlsson, equally stunned, mirrored his posture, her sharp gaze now fixed on Zola with an intensity that had nothing to do with skepticism and everything to do with a thirst for understanding. Her brow furrowed, not in anger, but in profound contemplation. This wasn't a fluke. Kaito was stable. Critically so, perhaps, but undeniably stable. Minutes ago, he had been gone. Now, he was clinging to life, breathing, his heart beating with a rhythm Zola had painstakingly, impossibly, coaxed back from the brink. Zola looked up, her gaze meeting theirs. Her eyes, deep and knowing, held no triumph, no self-congratulation. Only a quiet, resolute compassion. She simply nodded towards the monitor, where Kaito's vitals now hummed with a steady, if still precarious, rhythm. The immediate crisis was averted. The child was saved. And in that quiet, echoing room, a miracle had just unfolded, leaving every elite medical professional utterly, profoundly speechless, forced to confront the impossible truth. The invisible rookie nurse had just done what they, with all their advanced training and technology, could not. The silence in the operating room was heavier, more profound than any sound. It hummed with disbelief, with the ghosts of a crisis averted, and with the undeniable truth that had just unfolded. No one moved, not even Dr. Octavius Rook, whose initial fury had dissolved into a stark, unblinking astonishment. His eyes, usually sharp with command, now held a glassy, distant quality, reflecting the shattered fragments of his own certainty. His pride, a fortress meticulously built over decades, lay in ruins around him, exposed by the quiet, unassuming woman standing before him. Dr. Linnea Karlsson, usually the embodiment of cool, scientific reason, stood rooted to the spot, her hand still hovering near the defib paddles she hadn't needed. Her analytical mind was in overdrive, replaying every frantic moment, every precise, unconventional movement Zola had made. She'd threatened disciplinary action, had watched the vitals flatline, had seen Kaito Sato return from the precipice. It defied every textbook, every protocol she held sacred. Yet, the boy was breathing. His heart was beating. The impossible had happened. Her gaze, usually critical, now held a bewildered reverence, a profound respect wrestling with ingrained skepticism. Nurse Manager Riya Singh, who had observed Zola from the periphery, her posture usually rigid with adherence to rules, now softened, almost imperceptibly. A slow, hesitant breath escaped her. She had seen countless emergencies, managed teams of seasoned professionals. Never had she witnessed such raw, unorthodox efficacy. She looked at Zola, not as a naive rookie, but as someone who had just rewritten the rules of emergency medicine in their very operating room. A subtle tremor of awe ran through the surrounding surgical staff, the hushed whispers of impossible. And who is she, beginning to break the spell of silence? Zola, oblivious to the stares and the dawning realization around her, hadn't moved. Her focus remained entirely on Kaito, her brow still furrowed with a protective intensity. She didn't seek credit, didn't preen. Her shoulders, which had carried the immense weight of a child's life, now relaxed slightly, but her hand remained gently on Kaito's chest, a silent sentinel. For Zola, the only validation that mattered was the steady rhythm on the monitor. Rook, finally finding his voice, cleared his throat, the sound gravelly, stripped of its usual bravado. Nurse Ndlovu, he began, the name escaping his lips with an unfamiliar respect. What exactly did you do? His words were not a demand for an explanation born of dismissal, but a desperate plea for understanding from a man whose world had just been irrevocably altered. Karlsson stepped forward, her voice tight with a mixture of scientific curiosity and sheer bewilderment. That wasn't a standard maneuver. Not even an improvised one I've ever seen. It was too precise, too specific for a vascular injury near the heart. Where did you learn such techniques? Her question, though direct, carried no hint of accusation, only a raw, unvarnished desire to comprehend. Zola finally turned, her calm eyes sweeping across the faces of the elite medical team. There was no arrogance in her gaze, no "I told you so." Only a quiet, almost melancholic, understanding. She took a deep breath, her voice soft, yet resonating with an unshakable conviction that silenced every murmur in the room. There are places, she began, her voice a low, steady current, where the rulebook is just paper. Where medical supplies are scarce, time is an enemy, and life hangs by a thread as thin as a single pulse. She paused, her gaze drifting back to Kaito, a ghost of a memory flickering in her eyes. I learned in those places. In field hospitals, under mortar fire, where a sterile environment was a luxury we couldn't afford. Where a child's life, or a soldier's, often depended on a quick hand and a clear mind, no matter how unconventional the method. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Rook's jaw dropped, his mind struggling to reconcile the quiet, unassuming rookie with the picture she was painting. Karlsson's eyes widened, a dawning horror and awe replacing her scientific detachment. Singh's hand flew to her mouth. I served, Zola continued, her voice gaining a quiet strength, as a frontline medic. 3 tours in active war zones. Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. You learned to improvise. You learned to recognize the subtle shifts, the minute indicators of internal bleeding, even when diagnostics fail. You learned to stabilize, to buy time, to stop a hemorrhage with whatever you have, wherever you are, when waiting for surgery isn't an option. She looked directly at Rook, then at Karlsson, her eyes conveying a truth forged in fire. What I did for Kaito, it was a method born of desperation, refined by necessity. It's about external manipulation to create a temporary, focused pressure and coagulation, stabilizing the fragile vascular tissue just enough to prevent complete collapse and buy those precious minutes for more definitive care. It's not in any textbook because it's a technique for when there are no textbooks, only life and death. The revelation hung in the air, a profound echo of a past no one could have imagined. This quiet woman, who had blended seamlessly into the background of St. Jude's, carried the weight of worlds, the scars of unimaginable challenges. She wasn't just a nurse, she was a survivor, a warrior healer, whose unique expertise had been forged in the crucible of humanity's darkest conflicts. And in that moment, the entire elite medical team, from the chief of surgery to the most junior resident, felt their own perceptions shatter, replaced by an overwhelming wave of shock, admiration, and a profound, humbling respect for the extraordinary woman in their midst. Zola Ndlovu, the invisible rookie, was no longer invisible. Her silent strength had spoken volumes, and her true identity, a testament to resilience and unwavering compassion, had just been unveiled. The days following Kaito Sato's miraculous stabilization were a whirlwind of medical follow-ups, hushed conversations, and a palpable shift in St. Jude's hallowed halls. Kaito, initially still in critical condition, showed steady and remarkable improvement. Zola's intervention had bought the surgical team the precious time they needed to repair the underlying vascular fragility without the immediate, high-pressure threat of a catastrophic bleed. Within weeks, Kaito was off critical care, then out of the ICU, and soon, delighting his parents with his vibrant, 10-year-old energy, a testament to a second chance at life. His laughter echoed through the pediatric ward, a sweet melody of triumph. The change in the hospital's key figures was profound and, for those who witnessed it, truly inspiring. Dr. Octavius Rook, whose arrogance had once been as prominent as his surgical skill, walked with a noticeable new humility. The incident had been a public, if contained, humbling. He spent hours reviewing Zola's improvised technique, consulting with military medical experts to understand its nuances. He didn't just acknowledge Zola's skill, he sought to understand its genesis and integrate its lessons. In a closed-door meeting with the hospital board, he didn't deflect blame but rather took responsibility for his initial dismissiveness, advocating passionately for Zola. He proposed the establishment of a specialized rapid response unit, specifically designed for rare, time-sensitive emergencies, with Zola Ndlovu at its core. It was a concession that shocked everyone, proving that even the most rigid minds could bend under the weight of undeniable truth, and a child saved life. Dr. Rook, once concerned only with his legacy, now seemed genuinely committed to fostering innovation from unexpected places. Dr. Linnea Karlsson, the embodiment of protocol, experienced a different kind of transformation. The rigid lines of her worldview, once so clearly defined by established medical texts, had blurred. She found herself seeking Zola out, not to question, but to learn. She initiated a series of workshops, initially for her department, on situational awareness and adaptive intervention, a concept she'd once dismissed as anathema to her precise field. She began to see the quiet, unassuming nurses and residents not as cogs in a machine, but as potential wells of untapped experience. Her sharp intellect now applied itself not just to rules, but to understanding the exceptions, the moments when human intuition and unconventional wisdom superseded procedure. She found herself mentoring junior staff with a newfound empathy, encouraging them to speak up, a stark contrast to her previous dismissive manner. Nurse Manager Riya Singh, whose commitment to order had made her initially view Zola as a potential liability, became one of her staunchest allies. She'd always prided herself on knowing her staff, yet Zola had been a complete enigma. The revelation of Zola's past shattered Riya's preconceived notions of what a rookie nurse could be. She spearheaded a review of the hospital's hiring and mentorship programs, advocating for more holistic assessments that valued diverse life experiences. She understood now that true competence wasn't always legible on a standard resume. She ensured Zola was not just integrated into her new specialized role, but celebrated, shielding her from the initial media curiosity and allowing her the space to thrive. Riya, once a stickler for the rulebook, now understood that sometimes the spirit of care demanded breaking it. As for Zola, her life at St. Jude's was irrevocably changed. The invisibility she'd worn like a second skin dissolved. She remained Zola, quiet, compassionate, grounded, but her quietness was now seen as depth, her humility as strength. She embraced her new role within Dr. Rook's pioneering rapid response unit, leading training sessions, lending her unique perspective to complex cases, and developing new protocols for extreme medical emergencies. She didn't seek the spotlight, but she accepted the respect, finding comfort in the knowledge that her skills, honed in the harshest of environments, could now save lives in a different kind of battlefield. She didn't return to the war zones, but she carried their lessons, using her past not as a burden, but as a foundation for a future filled with purpose. Her authentic life wasn't about fame, but about finding a place where her extraordinary capabilities could serve, where she belonged, not just as a nurse, but as Zola Ndlovu, the warrior healer. She found deep satisfaction in mentoring younger nurses, teaching them not just medical techniques, but the resilience of the human spirit, the importance of observation, and the courage to act when all hope seemed lost. The story of Zola and Kaito became a legend whispered through St. Jude's, a powerful reminder that heroism often wears the most unassuming disguise. It taught them that true wisdom wasn't confined to titles or experience alone, but could be found in the quiet corners of the world, in the eyes of someone you least expected. It was a story of hope, of second chances, and of the profound, transformative power of compassion, proving that when people are willing to open their minds and hearts, even the most rigid structures can evolve, leading to growth, understanding, and a stronger, more human approach to healing. Zola, the quiet hero, had not just saved a boy, she had, in her own unassuming way, helped save the soul of a hospital, reminding everyone that empathy and courage, in all their forms, are the most powerful medicine of all. Zola's journey reminds us that true heroism often wears the most unassuming disguise, proving that quiet courage and profound compassion can redefine everything. Her story is a testament to the extraordinary potential hidden within us all. What part of Zola's transformation resonated most deeply with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you were inspired by this tale of quiet strength, please subscribe to join our growing global community. Your support helps us create more compelling, heartwarming stories like Zola's, exploring the depths of human resilience. Thank you for watching, for being part of our journey, and for helping us celebrate the true heroes among us. We truly value your presence.